kusukela ngoMsombuluko kuya ngoLwesihlanu kuqala ngehora lesine kuya kwelesihlanu u4 kuya ku5 ntambama nangoMgqibelo kusukela ligamanxe ihora lesishiyagalombili 8:30 kuze kugamanxe ihora lokuqala emini 1:30. Zithameleni futhi lezi zifundo emsakazweni Ukhozi FM njalo ngoLwesine kusukela ngo9 kuya ku10 ebusuku. Ningangena ekhasini lethu lika Facebook elithi Go Digital SA_movement noma kwi-YouTube uthi Go Digital SA Foundation. Siyethemba nizolijabulela lolu hlelo oluhlose ukunifundisa futhi lulekelele kulokho enikufunda ezikoleni zenu. Luthokozeleni ke lolu hlelo nimeme nabo bonke abanye abafundi bebanga le-12 grade 12 ukuze nabo bazuze kulo futhi nonke nicijeleke ukuphumelela kwizivivinyo zenu zokuphela konyaka.
Sanibonani, igama lami nguSanela Msebi, ngizone thulela izifundo zobuchwepheshe. Le zifundo zobuchwepheshe uzosithola njalo ngeMgqibelo phakathi kuka-11:30 to 12:30. You can watch these things on Facebook, online, or you can also watch them on YouTube. So today what we're going to be doing, hardwares. Since we've all know the computer and technology have come a very long way since the first computers were used to make advancements in space travel and landing on the moon. They no longer take the entire buildings and cost a lot of millions of friends who was set up. And so for that reason, we are able to dispatch this computers in our homes, in our workplaces. So we're going to be looking at the hardware and their purposes. So we're going to be summarizing computer components, grade 10 and 11, as well as our main functions. So a computer, or a hardware and hardware in a purpose. So let's start to take a look at them. First thing, if I want to understand, which is a computer in a processing site, so we've got our input devices, whereby you won't get the into our computers, same devices. And then once that information is apart into your computer, then there's a process that is called processing. So it's our devices to process all those information. We're going to be looking at those devices as well. And then once the information has been processed, it has to be stored into your computer. So the minute it is stored, it has to do what? It has to go out of the computer. Hence, we need our output devices. Then we need to use them to communicate. So then we have our communication devices. So first, let us look at our input devices. Input devices, a most common and important one is your keyboard. Your keyboard consists of various keys that a user presses to give our commands or to type our letters. We've got different types of our keyboard that you have to understand. We've got a standard keyboard, let's see, into our computers, computer lab, and then we've got a laptop keyboard, the one is integrated with your laptop. So for people who play some games onto their computers, there's also a keyboard specifically designed for them. It is called a gaming keyboard. And then we also have a visual keyboard for people who actually do things online. Now, after the keyboard, we've got pointing devices. Now, pointing devices are the devices that controls the movement on the cursor on the screen. Now, pointing devices. The first pointing devices is your mouse. And then you've got the touchpad, and then you've got a touch screen. I know some people will say maybe a touch screen is not an input device. Yes, it may not be, but it's an input and output device. So you're going to be looking at it as an input device. Then you've got a trackball, a pen input device, as well as a joystick. We may not look at them all in details, but let us start and look at the mouse. A mouse is the second most common input device to use with a computer, after a keyboard, obviously. A mouse is a pointing device. It allows a user to move. If you are seeing it on the screen, it allows a user to move the cursor onto the computer screen, as well as point, click, and select various programs and items. So we've also looked at a touchpad. So a touchpad is a small square rectangular input devices on a laptop. So now you told into your computer, you told with laptop. But the function is exactly the function with mouse. You use it by moving your finger across the pad to move the cursor onto the screen. Like the standard computer mouse, it touchpad in two buttons, at the bottom, right next to you. Like the standard computer mouse, it touchpad, the buttons are now on left and right. So we use it to allow a user to scroll up or to scroll down the pages. So after touchpad, we've also talked about a touchscreen, which a touchscreen is also one of the input devices. So a touchscreen, unlike the keyboard and the mouse, it serves as a dual role, as both an input and an output device. So a touchscreen, it will allow you as a user to use your fingers on it, or to use a stylus, or to just directly press a button and select options that appear on the screen. Now that we are done with these input devices, pointing devices, we're also going to be looking at the scanning and reading devices. Now, scanning and reading devices, nama scanner, nama RFID, radio frequency ID code, nama QR codes, nama OCR or magnetic strips. So scanning and reading devices, they scan documents such as photographs and pages of text, or they also convert them into a digital format. They're able to read text, they're able to read symbols, QR codes, and magnetic strips. And input devices, that one. We've also got a video device. Now remember, we are looking at input devices. So a video device is also something that we actually use to input data into our computers. So what it does, it captures media such as pictures, videos, and sounds. We've got different types as well of video devices. So when it comes to different types of video devices, we know of a video camera, we know of a webcam, and we also know of a digital camera. So most of you will actually think or will actually know, it's a fact. A video camera and a digital camera. So let us look at a digital camera. We no longer have to look at a video camera, let's look at a digital camera, because here are most of the same work. So a digital camera is a device to capture photographs and store them onto a digital memory card instead of on film. So like back in the time, last system film, just digital camera to store some photographs, so storage. Remember, this is an input devices. So what does it do? It stores, it captures and stores. And then we're going to be looking at the later stage, we're going to be looking at storage devices. So once the image is stored, you can transfer it into your computer. You can then manipulate it. So that is to edit the image. You can print it out, where output devices, or you can upload it to the internet. Some digital cameras can record video images with sound. So that is why we don't have to worry about video cameras, because the digital camera now, if we tell that, it's more like the same thing as your digital camera too. An example of this is a camera on your smartphone. Camera on your smartphone falls under a digital camera, and it's an input device. Next thing we're going to be looking at webcams. Webcams ayayifanela nje webcams nama-camera lawa normal ama-digital cameras ayayifanela nje webcams normal with it's a digital camera and it's a video cameras. A webcam is a type of digital camera that is connected directly into your computer. It makes it possible for the user to stream live videos to or through the computer. So if you've seen people using Zoom, or Teams, the reason why or they are able to do that because of a webcam, whereby they are able to connect or to stream izinto abasuke befuna. The camera consists of a lens, image sensor, and support electronics. Some webcams include microphone on them so that it allows you to record a sound. Others need a separate microphone. So you have a webcam and then you have a separate microphone on the side so that you are able to record the sound while you are recording yourself. Laptops and notebooks have a built-in webcam in most cases. They also have a built-in microphone as well. Now we are done with our video. Let's go to our audio devices. Again, our audio devices will also help you to input data into your computer. We've got different types of audio devices, but what do audio devices do? They communicate with your computer using your voice. You cannot use a microphone just for sweet nothing. You use your microphone to do what? To communicate with your computer using your voice. You use a voice recognition device to communicate with your computer what is it that it has to do. So we've got different types of audio devices. Examples or types of audio devices are microphones, are voice recognition devices. A microphone is an input device that makes it possible for the user to record sound, which is then stored onto your computer. A variety of sounds can be recorded, including music, ambient sound, and your own voice. So for you to be able to do all of this, you need to have a microphone. And then we've got something that's called a voice recognition. Now, a voice recognition or a voice activation, it's a software that enables a computer to take verbal commands given by the user and translate and interpret them. I remember back in the days, a friend of mine showed me a phone, call Sanele, and then your phone goes direct and call Sanele, or send an SMS. Once you get to an SMS and then it just opens an SMS. So because it was an activation, so it takes command given by the user and translates those commands and interpret them. It does all of this by converting the audio received from the microphone to digital signals that the computer can actually interpret. So whatever you are saying, it gets converted. It's converted to a digital signals because the computer understands our digital signals, and then the computer will interpret our digital signals and do as you command them to. The signals are then compared to a database containing weights. That is why in most of the cases you'll be asked to make a practice of the weights because it knows of the weights. You cannot just say SMS. So it has to compare to a database containing weights. It has to compare to a database containing phrases. It has to go and compare database containing actions that should be performed. Okay, so now we are done with the voice recognition. Now let's look at another input device. There's also an input device that is called a biometric device. Now, biometric device, like the way it would say, biology, metric. So biometric devices will measure a person's unique physical characteristics. We watch movies whereby umuntu on the screen so that his or her eye will actually able to be scanned with a particular door, or a finger has to be used to open a particular door. So the biometric devices contains different types. One will be your fingerprint scanner, 2 will be your eye and iris scanners, and 3 will be your facial recognition. So your fingerprint scanner will actually detect your fingers will actually detect this finger belongs to a certain person, this particular finger belongs to another person, while the eye and iris will actually look at the eye itself, while facial recognition will look at how your face is actually designed. Another input device is called a point of sale terminal, or an ATM. Mainly in the retail and restaurant industry, to keep an accurate track of stock and orders, we have to use a point of sale. And ATMs are also used exclusively in the banking industry. So it's an input device because we have to put your keys, you have to put your PIN, you have to put the amount of money that you need. A point of sale, uyahamba uyothenga esitolo. They know what is the SA said. They keep track of stock and orders. They know this is to say is a visitor as a second into the stock. So without a point of sale, retail and restaurant industry, they are not able to keep accurately of the stock as well as on their orders. Now, like anything else, you're into risks that is associated with. With an input device, we've also got a risk associated with it. So we're going to be looking at the risk associated with input devices. Remember, the main function of any input device is allowing the user to interact with the computer. Due to this and the fact that most users spend a large amount of time using many of the devices, we need to note that there are certain risks that you should be aware of. The first risk that is associated with an input device is called keystroke logging. Now, when we talk about a keystroke logging, it's a method that is used by hackers to record your keystrokes. So whenever you are typing something onto your computer, the keystrokes can be used to identify personal information, such as bank details and such as passwords. Keystroke logging, also known as logging, is normally done with malicious software or something that you call a malware, AI installed into your computer. We've also got a pathogen transmission. This is a physical injury. We've also got a physical injury whereby an extensive use of keyboard, mouse, trackball, and touchpad might lead to physical injuries, such as carpal tunnel syndrome or repetitive strain injury, where we need to service the computer for a longer period of time. Oh, yes, and then we've got a pathogen transmission. A pathogen transmission, if the input device attached to a computer are used by a large number of people, it might play a role of transmission of germs and other pathogens. Now we can bear testimony now because of the pandemic that is going on currently. So a pathogen transmission in a chances because about they share mouses, they share keyboards. So it is also very vital for us to understand to sanitize our devices or to sanitize our input devices as well. Another problem that we face with our input devices are privacy issues. When it comes to privacy issues, for example, if a webcam and a microphone are connected to a computer, a hacker might be able to gain access to them. It only happens when you are connected online. This will then allow the hacker to gain access to your private images and to your conversation, as well as with keyloggers. This is actually done by malware that is installed into your computers. So all of those are problems that comes with our input devices. Let's take a look at what we were just doing, and then let's remind each other with what is it that we are doing next. We were looking at input devices, whereby the devices that we use to input data into our computers. Now, what we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at our processing devices, storage devices, output devices, as well as communication devices. Let us go forward. The very first processing device is something that we call a motherboard. But before we get into a motherboard, maybe let us look at our input devices as well. Your data that was received from an input device, it must be modified. it must be changed before it can be sent to the computer's output devices. This is done by the computer's processing devices through the implementation of certain instructions and through the implementation of calculations. So in the section that is processing, we take a brief look at the most common processing devices. So the first example is a CPU, a GPU, and a RAM. We also provide some guidelines on how to determine which processing devices is best suited for you. So let's start with the motherboard. Motherboard is your first processing device. Your motherboard connects all the components of the computer. Anything that is connected into your computer, even when you put your memory stick, it's connected to your motherboard. Even when you put your CD-ROM is connected to your motherboard. I'm talking about all the cards that you put into your computer, they go straight to your motherboard. So once you have a motherboard, you actually have everything. And then the next thing that you have to have with processing devices is a CPU. This is how a CPU actually looks like. It's just, I know some of you guys will think what is CPU. It is cool as Bamba as a computer, and most of you were made to believe that. But the CPU completes the general processing task of the computer, as the name suggests. It's the core. It's the center of the computer, central processing unit. The CPU is one of the most important parts of any computer. Our responsibilities are maningi kakhulu, from receiving and carrying out the computer's instructions to allocating more complicated tasks to other chips that will better handle the task. So you see, CPU, the brain of the computer, will actually know, okay, whereas in this particular chip is this particular chip. More like your brain. Your brain will know what is supply where, and where. You're having problems. Maybe for an example. Let's evaluate the CPU because of the reason, only one reason. It's one of the most important part of the computer. CPU. When trying to decide which CPU is best suited for you, you should consider something that is called gigahertz. So gigahertz refers to the CPU frequency and is an indication of the processor's speed. As a general guideline, the higher the frequency, the better the CPU. Another thing that you have to look at when you're deciding on the type of the CPU, a number of cores. As with the processor speed, generally more cores are better. Another thing, a factor, though it is not a foolproof method, as computers with the same number of cores and the same gigahertz can operate at a very speed, with many other factors, this is not a foolproof when it comes to cores, as computers with the same number of cores and the same gigahertz can operate at a very different speed. The best advice is therefore to research a CPU on the internet and find the best CPU in your price range, because some of them, they differ with their prices. The very next thing that we're looking at with processing devices is something called GPU. Now, a GPU, it completes the graphic processing tasks of the computer. Examples of each GPU in most cases would be your graphic card. So Logilo would represent graphics. So it's graphics processing tasks. Each GPU is a specialized processing unit responsible for display functions. Like the CPU, the GPU is responsible for making calculations and for following instructions. However, unlike the CPU, the GPU's instructions are limited to the calculations needed to render and display images on the screen. The GPU is also referred to as the display adapter, as a graphic card, as a video adapter, as a video card, as a video controller, or even as a gaming card, like I've mentioned earlier on. So, graphics arc. Graphics akho hamsana graphic card, graphics akho hamsana ne display adapter, graphics akho hamsana ne video adapter, hamsana ne video card, hamsana ne video controller. So even when you are playing games, you need to have bigger graphics. So GPU will actually able to sebenza izinga. Another devices that we use in processing is called RAM. So we all know RAM. I think it's the very first thing that we learn about into computer with and all of that. So RAM is a very high-speed storage that's temporarily stores data that the CPU uses. So what does it do? What does it do? It enables the computer to work with a vast amount of information at the same time. It does this by acting as a helper to the GPU and acting as a helper to the CPU. You are able to store the information that is currently being used and loading the data that they may want to use next. So the minute uvula any game, the minute uvula any document, iyona uRAM wakho osukusebenza ngaleso sikhathi leso. So uyakwazi ukuthena khathi uvula information eningi at the same time, ukwazi lo information leyo uyimanage kahle. So iyasiza ku GPU yakho, iyasiza futhi ku CPU yakho. But while umsebenzi usukusebenza ngawo isuke story, but on the other hand futhi isuke yazi ukuthi usebenza ngani ngomunye umsebenzi on the other side. So if it wasn't for RAM, ngaba ukwazi ukuvula your music, uvula ama-card akho, uvula your documents. But because of it, you are able ukuthi information also ukusebenza ngayo currently uyisebenzise. And it knows ukuthi ugcina udlala something else, ugcina type something else. So your RAM will actually able to load the data ongenzeka ukuthi wenzani usebenzise next. The very next thing kuma processing devices akho is your ROM. So it's called non-volatile memory. For an example, when your computer starts up, it uses the information that is stored onto the ROM to start up. So you don't get the information into your computer, unawo yini hard drive ungakanani, unawo yini RAM ungakanani, ibhodi lakho linjani, unawo yini DVD-ROM. So all of those information, when your computer is starting up, it needs to have a read-only memory. So the way to read only, it means you cannot able to change anything that is installed in it. You can only able to use it as it appears. Now let's take a look back again. We've done our input devices. I hope you remember the input devices. Among them, we spoke about your mouse, we spoke about your keyboard. And then we've moved on to processing devices, where we spoke about your RAM, your ROM. Remember, the information has to be inserted into your computer, and then it has to be processed. After that, it gets stored, and then after it's stored, it has to go out. It's an output devices we need. And then once it's out, we have to communicate using all the information that we have. Then we've got communication devices. Now, the very first thing that we look at among storage devices, obviously, we all familiar with our hard drives. So in the previous section, when we look at the various input devices that you can use to transfer your data into your computer, of which were our input devices, they put the folder. To ensure that this data is not lost, your computer will need a storage devices to store the data, which could either be an internal storage device, such as the standard hard drive, or an external device or storage device, such as a portable hard drive, or such as a flash disk. To give you a better idea of which storage device is best suited for a specific situation, we look at some of the most common storage devices. We look at their advantages, their limitations, as well as some of the risks associated with them. This is what I always emphasize. Everything, anything that has got to do with computer, fanele ukuthi wazi ukuthi inama advantages, inama limitations. Zifundise lokho. Teach yourself ukwazi ukuthi 1 no 2 no 3 apha ama advantages akhona, 1 no 2 no 3 apha ama limitations akhona, because everything has got ama advantages and ama disadvantages into your computer world. Okay, let's start with the hard disk drive. It's well known as an HDD. The slow, long-term storage of data used by computer. We've got different types of hard drives. We are all familiar with an internal hard drive, and then we've got an external hard drive. Let's say Let us evaluate our storage devices. The very first thing that you need, or that you may need to look at when it comes to your storage devices, is your storage capacity. We're going to look at the internal device or an internal hard drive as well as external. But let's evaluate our storage devices. What are the things when deciding to buy a new storage device? Ekufanele ukuthi uzibheke. Into yokuqala ekufanele ukuthi uyibheke la is a storage capacity. Now, storage capacity will determine how much information you can save on the device. So masikhuluma storage capacity sikhuluma ngento efana no gigabyte, 10 gigabyte, 20 gigabyte, 50 gigabyte, etc. And then the next thing that you have to look at is something that is called storage speed. So whenever you are deciding to buy storage devices, look at the speed. How much does it goes per minute? So the speed will determine how quickly the new information can be written into the device or to read from the device. Which is because we are talking about hard drive, it takes too long, which is no much I say it takes too long, which is safe. So that is one thing that you also have to look at. Another thing that one has to look at is volatility. If volatility determines if the device will lose the data when turned off. You do not want a device that will lose all its data in case we are hammer, no, in case you are facing with a load shedding. So we also have to look at the volatility. Another thing, or rather the last thing that one has to evaluate to a storage device is the reliability and the durability. This determines how likely the device is to break down. So when you store thousands of hours worth of work or years worth of photos on a storage device, you do not want it to break unexpectedly. So for not to be a reliability as well as the durability of your storage device. The very first storage device is an internal hard drive. Internal hard drive, as they would say, internal. A hard drive is a piece of hardware in a computer in which data is stored and from which you can retrieve data. It is used to store files for your operating systems, for your softwares, for your personal information. So all modern computers, they comes equipped with an internal hard drive. Whenever you are installing a program, low program is going part into your internal hard drive. Whenever you are putting an operating system, no matter what information in with internal hard drive. And then we've got an external hard drive. An external hard drive, it's an external, although most hard drives are located inside the computer, there are some that are used as a portable storage devices. So you'll be to your picture. So it is known as an external hard drive. Unlike the internal hard drive, external hard drives are protected by a case that is designed to prevent damage to the drive and is connected to the computer by using a USB cable. So I'll follow to the volume computer just because it's an external. You just connect it using your USB cable. Another storage device is something that's called solid state drive. I remember back in the time, I think were the very first people to create a digital camera in a hard drive. So we are manning cameras in camera. And then they realize, you know what, the hard drive, once the hard drive is free. So they came up with a solid state drive. There it was even into your phone. Why does your phone has got 128 gigabytes on it? There's something called solid state drive. It's a fast, long-term storage of data used on the computer. The SSD is a storage device like a hard drive that does not use mechanical parts of standard hard drives. So cause it is spinner, my parts on our hard drive. Instead, this one, it consists of interconnected flash memory chips made of silicon. So due to this, an SSD functions more like a CPU that contains billions of small transistors each storing 1 bit of data. It obviously comes at a price. That is why we talked on ama-computers amaningi aphuma ne-solid state drive encane, because it's much more expensive per gigabyte. Another storage device that one has to look at whenever you are buying your computer or whenever you have a computer is something called a flash disk. It's a very small, non-volatile and portable device that connects to your computer using a USB port. Now, one thing I always emphasize with you guys, let us stop saying it's a USB. As far as we look at USB, because USB, it comes in different parts. No USB port, no USB cable, no USB device. So whenever you're saying this is a USB, USB what? USB cable, USB port, USB what? So we rather use it, or we rather call it a flash disk or a memory stick. So we all know what is a flash disk. It's a very small physical portable storage devices. As far as we connect, we mentioned even to your screen. As far as we connect via a USB port, because it is so small and highly portable. A flash disk is the best way to transfer data quickly and efficiently between two computers. A flash drive is also an ideal storage device for documents as well as photos. While we are at storage devices, let us also look at AMA memory cards. So AMA memory cards are non-volatile storage devices used mainly for storing digital information. We all know memory cards. We all have AMA memory cards, or most of us, into our phones. So it's not something that you can dwell too much on them. Another storage device is called a CD, DVD, or a Blu-ray disc. A Blu-ray disc, even though is even as popular as one would have hoped for, because a Blu-ray disc, it was a little bit expensive as in compared to the CDs and your DVDs. But just so you know, your Blu-ray will come at 25 gigabytes size wakhona, while your DVD is 4.7 gigabytes and your CD is 700 megabytes. So this are portable storage devices to which data files from a computer can be copied using a CD, a DVD, or a Blu-ray writer. What happens with the CD, DVD, and a Blu-ray disc is an optical disc drive iso leli ngaphakathi lapho ilona elikwazi ukwenza kube possible to either read data from optical discs such as ama-CDs, ama-DVDs, nama-Blu-ray, nokurekhoda futhi data into them. This, as well as the fact that most movies and music are supplied commercially on this disc, an optical disc drive is one of the most popular storage devices. You'll be surprised, because yona ikwazi ukustorage izinto for a longer period of time, unlike your memory stick. Another storage device that abantu abaningi abangakathandi ukuyisebenzisa or abangayisebenzisi kakhulu is something called a cloud storage. One of the advantages of living in the modern world is the luxury of the internet. This global network makes it possible to communicate over great distances. It also provides access to vast amounts of information. The internet also has also become one of the best places to store information through cloud storage. So cloud storage is a type of storage service provided to users that allow them to store information on the internet. The two best known services, these are not the only ones, because one has got a Huawei phone. So what does it mean? It means equal storage of Huawei. One has got a Xiaomi phone, equal storage naso. But the best two known services is called an Apple iCloud and a Google Drive. So this one, they provide you a specific amount of storage at no charge. So for iCloud, in most cases, they give you a 5 gigabyte. And then for Google Drive, they give you about 15 gigabytes. Although additional storage information can be purchased at a monthly fee. So what are cool? What are the they get to that point? Whereby 15 gigabytes is a deal with Google Drive. Then once you do that, you see hours to purchase it, and additional storage space. Or those of us monthly. We are done with our storage devices. So masibheka kancane emuva. Sibuke ama-input devices. Among them were your mouse, were your keyboard. And then sabuka ama-processing devices. Amongst them were your RAM, were your ROM, were your GPU. And then we've just looked at storage devices. Among them were your memory stick, were your internal and external hard drive. Right after we're done with storage devices, we are about to look at output devices. So in the previous unit, we looked at the devices that feed data into your computer, of which were input devices. The hardware that is responsible for storing the data, of which were storage devices, and the hardware that processes the data, of which were the processing devices. We now take a look at some of the most common devices that are used to present the processed data to the user or to other computers and networks, of which are called output devices. Now, an output device is any device that takes the data that has been stored onto your computer and make it available to the user. This can be done visually, such as a computer screen or a printer, or it can be done auditory, such as your speakers. So output devices are devices that was communicates information back to you. Eyokuqala, output device is something that is called a display device. A display device, it displays the images generated by the computer. An example of output devices or of display devices is your LCD monitor, is your television monitor, is your data projector. Let us look at the computer screen maybe because it's one of the most important display device or output device. Your computer screen or your monitor is the most important output device of any computer. It makes it possible for the user to visually interact with data and programs in a quickly and easy manner. So you are able to see izinto masinyane kalula. This is possible because the computer software is built around a visual representation of data, whether it is a page of text, whether it's a video on the internet or whether it's a 3D element in a game. Let us also evaluate when one looking to buy a new computer screen, easy peasy, the very first thing that one has to look at when evaluating the computer screen is something called pixels. Now, a good number of pixels is 1,920 pixels across the width of the monitor and 1,080 pixels across the height of the monitor. This is normally represented by the resolution of the screen as 1,920 by 1,080 or a full HD. Like the higher number of pixels, the better the screen. That is one thing that you have to evaluate when you are buying a computer. The other thing that one has to look at is the screen size. The size of a computer screen is measured diagonally from the bottom of the screen to the top of the screen. My 36 inch, 40 inch. So we call phansi ekhoneni lakhe esezantsi or ekhoneni phezulu. Ama-inches were measured like that. So the measurement is made in inches, and 1 inch is roughly about 2.5 centimeters. When looking at the size of the computer screen, one should take into consideration how big your desk is. While you have a bigger desk. So a big screen can cause eye fatigue and even can damage your sight if not replaced at the correct distance from your face. Any screen bigger than a 27-inch monitor will be too big for a normal size desk. We've looked at pixels, screen size. Now, another thing that one has to look at is something that is called refresh rate. Now, refresh rate refers to the amount of time it takes for the screen to be updated with the newest information. Because you're very strong, shift camera representation. So uma ngabe ukuthi refresh rate yakho isuke higher, akubonakala ukuthi sekushiftile information yakho isuke information esuke isintsha. So it is normally represented as the number of times the screen updates in 1 second. You see how fast this thing can be. Modern computer screens have a refresh rate of 60 Hz or 60 Hz. This means that the screen is updated with a new image information 60 times in 1 second. This should be more than sufficient for most users. So I wasn't going to sekuvele any image enter, noma sekuvele any information enter, because in a second, the information is updated 60 times. This should be more than sufficient, as I've just mentioned. However, talking about advanced screen as available manje, and a refresh rate that goes up to 144 Hz. These screens, like those with a higher number of pixels, will be much more expensive. And then we're still looking at our output devices. And if we our output devices that one has to look at is a printer. We've got different types of printers. Generally, our printers are used to convert electronic data into a hard copy. We've got an inkjet printer. For you to understand the dialogue before you buy your printer, you've got an inkjet printer, you've got a laser printer, and then you've got a multi-function device printer. Le was ukuthi yenze izinto eziningi, unlike ayikwazi photocopy kuphela, photocopy scanner, amanye futhi even fax. And then we've got an ink tank printer. Like I just mentioned, printers are generally used to convert electronic data into a hard copy. When you buy a printer, it is very important to know what you will be using the printer for, since different printers are good at different things. If you are looking at printing only black and white documents, you may not need to purchase a color printer because it may cost even more to operate. So I want us to look at things to keep in mind sithenga i-printer, because kubalulekile kakhulu lokho, since most people, they do have to have a printer at least in their homes. The very first thing that one has to look at is the speed. The second thing is the paper type or the paper size. Abanye basebenzisa A4, abanye basebenzisa A3. So it will be of no use for you to buy a printer A4 size, A3 size, while you're not using A4 sizes. Another thing that you also have to look at is the printer resolution, the cost to print in a page, the memory of the printer, if it has got wireless capabilities, as well as the cartridge. Let's start with the speed. Budget printers should be able to print about 3 to 6 color pages per minute. If a printer less than that, then you don't have to consider that printer. Another thing that one has to look at, as I've mentioned before, is a paper type and a paper size. Make sure to select a printer based on the type of documents you have to print. And then we've also got a printer resolution. Normally, our resolutions are measured in dots per inch, DPI, and this will actually affect the sharpness of the text as well as the images on the paper. A resolution of 600 DPI should be sufficient for the average user. It's advisable for you to buy. A cost per print or a cost to print a page. Now, color printers are more expensive to operate and cost more per page, even this is also true for printers with a higher resolution. So you also have to look at the cost to print a page. Another thing that one has to look at is the memory. All printers come with a limited amount of memory. Having more memory increases the speed at which printing takes place. This will only be noticeable if you are planning on printing pages with large images or tables on a regular basis. So we've also mentioned wireless capabilities. Here, most modern printers also come on Wi-Fi capabilities. Among they even come with Bluetooth capabilities. So this makes it possible for you to user to print documents without the need to be physically connected to the printer. And lastly is the ink cartridge. Make sure that ink cartridges are available for when you have to replace them. Cartridge. Okay, we are still under output devices. I know it's a little bit information to take, but we are about to wrap up. And output devices, esijwayele noma esiyaziyo i-headset. Remember, all the output devices convert data on a computer into a sound. So whatever ubukhona ngaphakathi computer yakho izoconvert ikwenze iweni kube sound. So you obviously what do you need? You need a headset to have your information iphumele ngaphandle noma ezindlebeni zakho. Speakers are one of the most popular output devices. They play back the sound on your computer. This makes it possible to listen to music. It also makes it possible to speak to friends over Skype, over Zoom. They're also able to make it possible for you to watch movies. So types of audio output devices is your headset and as well as your speakers. Okay, so we're done with our output devices. The very next thing that one has to look at now are communication devices. Remember, a communication device is a type of device that connects a computer to other computers in a network. An example of communication devices include internal equipment such as network or Wi-Fi card, as well as external equipment. So now the information from input, output, storage, processing, and etc. Now, what do you need? You need to communicate all this information using our devices. This is what your router, modem, and switch. So your router, what it does, it organizes and routes data on and between networks, which may include routing data from a home network to the internet, such as modem, and connecting many computers to the same network, such as switch. And then there are modem. In modem, you are able to use it to connect computers to a network and to the internet. Then the last one is called switch. So with a switch, we are able to connect many computers on the same internal storage. Remember, now we've looked at the hardware. So because we know we have our hardwares now, what we need to have, we have to have softwares for us to use our hardwares to ukuthi asebenze kahle abe of good use. Remember, we've got input, we've got output, we've got processing, we've got storage, and then we've got communication. That slightly, it must never get out of your mind. For the rest of your life, as we say, into any computer world. So then you are doomed. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much to Ithala, Go Digital SA Foundation, and thank you. Bye-bye. Done.
Siyathemba nifunde kahle nasithokozela isifundo sethu sanamhlanje. Enisethulelwe ngezilokotho ezinhle Ithala libambisene ne-Go Digital SA Foundation. Thamelani ke futhi esilandelayo ngesikhathi esifanayo. Ningakhohlwa ukumema nabanye abafundi bebanga le-12 ukuze nabo basizakale kulolu hlelo. Uma ninemibuzo noma nifisa ukuxhumana nathi, ningasithinta ngokufaka imibuzo yenu kwinombolo yethu ye-WhatsApp ethi 068 151 1072. Mfundi, ungakhohlwa ukubhala isifundo obuza ngaso ngaphambi kokubhala umbuzo wakho. Angiyiphinde inamba yethu 068 151 1072. Siyabonga.